So going to a slightly later period now, start to look at other perspectives than English. LaTorre is going to give us a talk on eugenics and racial medical discourse in scientific journals during fascism in Italy.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you to be here. In order to understand eugenics and the concept of race in fascist Italy, I would like to identify precise political and historical points that determined the evolution of this science in the period mentioned before. Firstly, race and fascist propaganda were born together immediately. In fact, the speech of Agosteo in 1921 in Rome, when Mussolini was not yet in power, he declared it from the outset that I want to make it clear that fascism must deal with the problem of race. Secondly, the famous Ascension speech, where Mussolini initiated the demography policy, where the birth rate was prioritized and healthcare of the people and their growth for the betterment of the race was a political issue. First step, Lateran Treaty, also called the Lateran Pact, in 1929. Treaty between Italy and the Vatican, in which is defined that the Roman Catholicism was the state religion of Italy. And thanks to this, precise dictates are also defined in medicine, research, and science. First step, with the birth of Italian East Africa in 1935, people began to speak explicitly about the Italian race, also to justify the apartheid regime imposed in African lands. And in 1938, the rise of a state anti-Semitism with the support of the eugenicists and the enactment of terrible racial laws in, the same year, sorry. The first step of eugenics as a science in Italy, however, was before fascism, and exactly the participation of a large national delegation at the International Congress called by the Eugenics Education Society and held here in London in 1912. The delegation was composed of authoritative figures in Italian medicine, who, with different opinions and scientific conclusion, were to be the promoter of this discipline in fascist Italy. It is in gynecology that it finds the most space in scientific journals. As a matter of fact, the first course on social eugenics in an institutional setting saw the light at the University of Genoa in 1912. In the same year, the Committee of Eugenics Studies was born. Its statute states that the purpose of the committee is the study of factors that can improve or worsen the qualities of future generation, both for physically or psychological aspect. While the Northern eugenics after the First World War approached it and pushed it strongly for abortion, birth control and sterilization of people considered it dangerous, instead in fascist Italy, the closeness with the Catholic Church created a new branch of this science called Italian or Latin eugenics. In 1924, the first Italian Congress of Social Eugenics was held in Milan, promoted by the Italian Society for Genetics and Eugenics. Notable historical importance is the presentation by Father Gemelli, a doctor and religious, founder of the Catholic University of Milan, who, with a paper entitled Religion and Eugenics, reaffirms the Church's positions. This would be consolidated by Pius XI 11th encyclical Castico Nubi in December 1930, the Pope expresses himself clearly by defining that the public authorities can never in any way directly injure or touch the integrity of the body, either for eugenic reasons or for any other reason. Birth control and premature marital visitation were immediately a thorny topic, from which the Italian eugenists distanced themselves. In an article entitled Natality and Eugenics in a February 1924 issue of the journal Social Defense, Hygiene, Welfare and Assistance magazine, we read that the birth control formula created across the Atlantic does not mean the knowledge of natural or artificial methods to prevent conception and the practical application of these methods to voluntarily limit offspring. Instead, rather a special rule of conduct to be maintained in married life, which is the fact of being able to have healthy and normal offspring. In 1923, there were attempts to establish institutes for the study of growth, biology, and psychology of the individual and the race. In fact, race and biometric control went so well with the fascist philosophy that in 1926, the Biotypical Orthogenetic Institute was inaugurated in Genoa. The Institute's medical clinic dealt with the physical and psychological anthropomorphic parameters of workers, aviators, young fascists, and sailors. It was disturbing the presence of a medical pedagogical consulting room named for antisocial minors. Its main purpose was to submit to a clinical anthropopsychological examination juveniles released from prison or reported by the public security authorities to their families or institutions as unruly or behavior and conduct of a markedly antisocial nature. The insights and different theories also appear in the press of professional associations, in particular the journal The Medical Federation, Journal of College of Physicians, and after 1932, the Medical Forces, official journal of the National Fascist Doctors Union. In 1930, the college supported the request to create a specific national institute for life extension and race improvement. In an article that appeared in 1931, emphasizes the involvement of general practitioners. In particular, we read that it is true that the prolongation of life and improvement of the race presuppose a vast complex action involving general practitioner, trusted figures of the patient. In medical journals, the concept of the Jewish race and how to define it poses difficulty for specialists and professionals. The 1938 racial laws never mentions a definition of a genetic parameter because it did not and does not exist. In fact, the law itself bases membership solely in parental or family parameters like surnames. This criticism is highlighted even though it is valid and politically uncompromising in the magazine of the Fascist Union. In a 1939 article entitled How to Defend the Race, after a long exaltation of the Duke's work, the author emphasized that, for me, an hygienist doctor, a doctor educated in the study of social health problems, and one who has devoted intensive years of study in the field of bacteriological and immunology, it is not possible to see the conception of a human race as a pure and stable anthropological expression. Race does not exist, but no one could oppose the wishes of the party. The fortnightly magazine with a grim title, The Defense of Race, published from 1938, the year of the racial laws, enjoyed unlimited financial support from the regime's government bodies. It was from the start a great experiment in sociological marketing with bright color, eye-catching graphics and eye-catching photos in perfect contemporary style. It was a major vehicle to encourage racism among Italians and implant hatred towards not only Black people, but also Jews, special needs, and mentally ill people. An honorable mention of giving a different opinion than the other association was the Italian Society for the Study of Sexual Issues. Its founder, Aldo Mieli, was an interesting character. A chemist, but above all an historian of chemistry, he was also the director of the journal. In 1928, he was forced to emigrate to France, and in 1939, being Jewish and homosexual, he fled to Argentina. He was, as they say, a voice out of the chorus in Italian eugenic science, and was, within the limits of the period, a forerunner for the rights of homosexuals. In a 1922 editorial entitled Purpose of Eugenics, Mieli clearly separated the concept of race from genetic research, declaring that the eugenicist is not called upon to prefer one race over another and to work for the extinction of the remaining races. If it should even come to that, it is highly possible that when a referendum is held, the Black races living on Earth would vote for the extinction of the white race. Moreover, they would find many excellent arguments in favor of this decision. At the end of 1936 and during 1937, a denigrating campaign became against citizens of a Jewish faith. On all fronts and in all mass media available to the regime, from culture and science to the children's journals. In 1938, the Royal Decree Law provisions for the defense of the Italian race came into force. In it, the precise requirements for Italian citizens of the Aryan race and those of the Jewish race are defined by law. In the newspapers served for female health personnel, specifically nurses, I haven't found anything in particular on the subject. Instead, there are articles in women's magazines. In the female Italian newspaper, we find an article combining the fascist view of women and eugenics. In 1927, we read, "The problem of the race is carved here in a precise and firm manner. The preparation of a new generation is the formidable task that fascism has taken on to make history. The mention is enough to make one realize how great and difficult the burden of responsibility is for Italian women. A great duty which arises from family tradition and is linked to the future." The Almanac of Italian Woman initially was in contrast with the La Rassegna della Donna mentioned before, because its reading target were emancipated militant in women's movements. This was at least the case until 1936, when the top management of the editorial office changed radically, reflecting a female vision of the regime. In an article that appeared in 1925, Milan Congresses again emphasized it, and where we read, the importance and value of eugenics were established as a new need of medical studies, directly linked to the physical and moral development of the race. Here too, therefore, the concepts revolve around a revolutionary new science that will eliminate disease and moral problems. For reasons of time, I preferred to look for representative elements to briefly tell you about my research, which is still in progress. In conclusion, it's important to say that eugenics and the concept of race in fascist Italy always retained original connotations, both because of the regime's demographic policy and because for the total lack of possibility to define a common race. In spite of this, the medical profession was initially with the freedom of speech, but then completely subjugated to the political dictates of the period. It's contributed thought its discussion and thought its relations with the public to divulgate this concept and to try out and consolidate them in Italy of the time. And thank you so much for your patience. I really should apologize for my English. I heard much better.
No.
So sorry.
I understood every word, and it's much better than my Italian, I can tell you that much. Thank you. That was an absolutely fascinating talk. Really interesting intersection of the social, the political, and discourse, and of course, terrible impacts on the lives of individuals. Richard.
Yeah, very interesting. I noticed most of your material is like before World War II, if not overwhelming. And I know before World War II, the German eugenicists movement was very closely aligned with the American eugenicists movement, and there was a lot of cross collaboration. Given the connection between Germany and Italy, I wonder where the Italians, was there also this trend of aligned relationship with the American eugenicists as well, or
not so close. It's more close with the English one.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It's not more class-based.
Yeah.
Okay.
Really. Yeah. And then at the beginning, well, even science is very close with the political movement. Yeah. So we should be careful when the period, at the beginning we were close in some sciences, at the end of the fascist regime, other ones. Because at the beginning the German wasn't close with the first war, was the enemies, and at the end wasn't. Even sciences. But more, not so close. I find it, thank you so much, first of all, for your question, very interesting. I found in some articles about eugenics, American eugenics, only until the 1926. Yeah, after that I didn't. Yeah, thank you.
How long the tail is on these ideas, because certainly eugenics laws in the US go long past or to sterilizations, etc. And in the interest of firms in this country also, the tail of the eugenics movement still exists, although it's viewed positively now. The Mary Stopes clinics here were actually intended, they had eugenic intent, even if now they're viewed as something which is about women exercising choice. Their intent initially was eugenic. And also we still have eminent scientists in this country like Richard Dawkins advocating eugenic policies.
I know.
So these debates are still alive and active.
Yeah. Thank you.
input. As a linguist, I'm Italian. So there was a slide which display this Forze Sanitarie. It's not about
That's a strong. It's a
but an Italian notice it's stronger because we have Forze Armate, that is the army, and so that is sanitarian or medical army.
Absolutely.
And that was strong. It's the strongest.
Strong allocation.
Yep.
It's that sanitarian. We have Forze Armate, that is the army. So
And the mob is the movement towards the Italian. Is that-
No. You're right. You're right.
Sorry for mentioning it.
I'm speaking about the past. Huh? No, yeah.
This is the
Yeah.
let's say the abstract so expression for the army.
Yeah.
The institutional expression for the and Forze Sanitarie means this medical or sanitarian army. Let's say,
Absolutely.
regional,
Yeah.
stuff.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you.
That's-
Yeah, no. Thank you.
Please.
I know.
It's in the sense that this is more of a comment than an actual question, but talks of birth rates and everything that revolves around giving birth and having children are very common in Italian political discourse now.
Yeah.
So it's disturbing to see some similarities pop up here and there. And going back to Berg's talk this morning, there's a lot of depersonalization going on about telling people to give birth. We talk about natalità, right? As if it were, a concept, if there were no bodies involved in getting that done.
Yeah.
That's
yeah.
something that also comes out of your talk, and that's very relevant, very current, very disturbing. Thank you.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, it was disturbing even how women was speaking about themselves. The force for the fascism and for natality, for the fascism and for the party. So you couldn't understand me, so thank you so much.
Another study to be done going into the 1940s, where the nature of eugenics in Italy is forced to change. So if I don't know the context, Rob, please do correct me. But from what I hear from your talk, there was a sort of classification, stigmatization, also to some extent, almost like quarantining of these groups. I think there was an island where homosexuals, for example, they were just kept there. So it wasn't extermination that was sought or abortion, but it was this classification, degrading their position in society, quarantining these people. And then, of course, in the early 1940s with Great German influence, it turned into extermination. And I wondered whether the discourse at that point in the Italian press shifts to try and support that, or whether maybe with the Lateran Treaty in mind, they still try to maintain the fantasy that extermination isn't happening.
No, we participate. We have to be honest about that, because history is not a fact. And it was very interesting how scientific and doctors were very, they participate to change the mind in that. And only, of course, for Jewish. But it was very, very interesting how they handled the problem, because we don't have any kind of race. Italian race doesn't exist. We are typical land from immigration and invasion from all history in Europe. So, so how they identify the people from the surnames, and isn't it terrible? I mean, how can you say that.
I was also reminded while you were talking there of just how pernicious those impositions of race identities can be. Thinking of Rwanda, what a colonial administrations invented two races who hate one another to this day, and will actually, you know, go
Exactly.
when it's an entirely artificial social construct
Exactly.
with some quasi-scientific.
Exactly.
basis.
How to invent a new race.
Yeah, and that's only happening there. Well, thank you.
No,
That was
thank you.
Very good.
Thank you.